The Pittsburgh Steelers are 5.5-point underdogs against the Eagles this weekend. They're playing the game in Philly, a place that the Steelers haven't won since the 1960s. And if you have a hunch either way on what happens on Sunday, head over to today's presenting sponsor of the Bleav in Steelers show, and that is BetOnline.ag. Over-unders, player props, spreads, live in-game betting. If you want to place a bet on any of the NFL action, BetOnline.ag is the place to do it. Head over to BetOnline.ag today. BetOnline, the game starts here. Welcome into the Bleav in Steelers show. I'm your host, Mark Bergin, joined today by a fellow Steelers host. He's part of the Steel Curtain Network. Jeff Hartman joins the show now. Jeff, I know we talked at the start of the season, before the season got underway. It's good to see you again, my friend.
Hey, good to see you. Good to be back. Happy holidays.
Same to you. And let's get right into it because, Jeff, I'm concerned the Steelers are going to be without George Pickens, it looks like, yet again. You get by Cleveland a week ago, and I know that late in the postseason, it's like, well, you don't need a stud receiver. The Steelers are going to need George Pickens down the stretch. They're saying a grade 2 hamstring pull. Where are you at on your level of concern, considering it looks like Pittsburgh will be without their star receiver for back-to-back weeks?
My level of concern is TBD, to be determined. And the reason why I say that is based on the fact that I don't think last week's performance is truly indicative of what the offense will look like without George Pickens. And you might say that sounds foolish. They found out that George Pickens injured his hamstring after a post-practice workout Thursday afternoon. Didn't think it was that serious on Friday. Scotty Miller showed up thinking he was inactive on game day and then is thrust into the lineup. They did not prepare for life without George Pickens going into that Cleveland game. So TBD is I want to see what it looks like when they actually can prepare. So what does the plan look like when you know that George Pickens isn't going to be in the lineup? Does it have more Mike Williams? I hope so. How is Calvin Austin going to be impacted by this? Because I think he was kind of the one that was stuck in the middle. Is he going to take some of George Pickens' reps because he's more comfortable with that route tree? If so, we know he's not that type of player. He's more of a complementary player. How do they make this work? Do they make it work? I think that's a really good question. I think the offense might look a little different, but I want to see what they do with a full week of preparation going into Philadelphia without George Pickens, something they did not have last week against Cleveland.
All right, so you're going with the glass half full perspective, which generally speaking, I like, considering you're at 10-3, but it's the first game Pickens has missed in his pro career last week.
Yeah.
I don't want to rush him back from a hamstring injury.
Absolutely not.
Like that, to where I'd rather have him in January when you need him in the postseason versus right now. But maybe I'm just looking ahead and I'm looking at these next 3 games and it's just like, where is the offense going to come from without George Pickens, who is by far the Steelers' best offensive player?
Yeah.
That's my level of concern with this week against Philly. Then you got Baltimore on the road, and you come back home on Christmas Day against the Chiefs. Like, I'm looking at this from the standpoint where you're lucky if you go 2-1 during that stretch, because this is a tough 3-game stretch as any team has had in the league. And you've, at least for this first game, you've got to do it without Pickens.
I agree 100%, by the way, about how you handle this hamstring injury. Do not rush him back.
Yeah.
If you rush him back, then you end up with like a Nick Herbig type injury. And Nick Herbig was not a rushing back situation, but when he injured his hamstring against Dallas, he missed a significant chunk of time. You cannot have that happen with George Pickens. I always said when I heard that he was inactive last week, Baltimore is the target date. Because truthfully, this game, while important, is a litmus test, does not have the significance of the game coming up the Saturday after this game against Baltimore at M&T Bank Stadium. That is the game. If you win that game, you win the division. And now all of a sudden you're talking about just locking up a seed going into that Week 18 game against Cincinnati, which could be meaningless for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Nonetheless, I think that George Pickens' injury is also, this may sound very altruistic, could actually be beneficial to the Steelers in the long run. In regards to the fact that
the injuries are eating this up, Jeff. Paint the picture for us, though.
They might lose this game. They haven't won in Philadelphia since Lyndon Johnson was the president of the United States, and young fans don't even know who that was. So I'm just saying, I look at this and say, let's say they do move the ball and they can put up points without George Pickens in a game. You get George Pickens back, and now all of a sudden maybe Mike Williams has a level of trust with Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson that he didn't have prior because he didn't get those opportunities. Maybe they start to find unique ways of getting Pat Freiermuth more than 3 targets a game. I think that this could, and again, altruistic, I understand that. This could actually have a benefit for the Steelers if they can find success without Pickens. Is that going to be easy? Hell no. He's the only dynamic playmaker they have on offense. The only one. People can talk about Jalen Warren. The dude's a backup running back. I'm sorry. You don't have a dynamic playmaker who is deemed a backup on the roster. So this is going to be tough sledding for sure. But I think that if you look at the long term, there could be some benefits to this.
Yeah, Freiermuth's had a nice little 3-game stretch. I've got it in my show notes here. So the last time the Steelers won in Philly, October the 24th, 1965. You mentioned Lyndon Johnson being president. U.S. troops started entering Vietnam. This is how long ago this was.
Yeah.
The Beatles performed at Shea Stadium. A Charlie Brown Christmas made its debut.
Maybe.
And the Penguins were not an NHL franchise. So that's how long it's been since the Steelers have won in Philly.
I don't even know what to say because there's been some really good Steelers teams since that win.
Yeah.
You said 67. The 70s dynasty existed where they won 4 out of 6 Super Bowls. You had a lot of success in the 90s, and you had a lot of success in the early 2000s in the Ben Roethlisberger era, and they never found a way to win in Philadelphia. Something always happened. I mean, you think back to, there was a game where Ben Roethlisberger was sacked like 8 times, and they won the Super Bowl that year, but they just struggle in Philadelphia. I don't know. This is going to be a really tough game, as it always is. I don't think that being a tough game has anything to do with where the game is played, though. That's just my own opinion.
Yeah. Pickens leads the Steelers in receiving yards. He has 850, 55 catches, 3 touchdowns for the Pittsburgh Steelers as well. So I would not expect him to play.
No.
And we'll see where you're at a week from now when you play the Baltimore Ravens. Speaking of the Steelers, too, and we'll come back to the Eagles, I promise, but on Hard Knocks, and you talk about eating it up with the Yinzers, Mike Tomlin, to me, has far and away been the star of the in-season version of Hard Knocks. We see it in Pittsburgh with the clips that you see on social media, his media availability, but this just behind-the-scenes access and just the life lessons that he's had. I'm not so much as concerned of, okay, if for whatever reason the Steelers ever parted ways with Tomlin, one of the other 31 teams would scoop him up. I'm now concerned about a network saying, let's get this guy in a broadcast booth. Let's get him as an analyst, and let's make him an offer he can't refuse with the amount of money that we could give him, and he doesn't need to wake up with a dead horse in his bed. Jeff Hartman, what say you about Mike Tomlin on Hard Knocks? Because it's been awesome to watch.
It has been. I thought episode 1 was far better than episode 2. That's just me.
Agreed.
But at the same time, I watched episode 1, and I knew that Mike Tomlin stole the show. But if you follow Mike Tomlin, and when I say that, you not just follow the Steelers, if you follow Mike Tomlin. So if you watched Mike Tomlin on the Pivot podcast with Brian Clark, if you watch Mike Tomlin go on Football and with Ben Roethlisberger, you've seen this. You've heard this. This is him. Like, this is him in his glory, because this is where he thrives, is in front of people, telling stories, motivating leaders of men. We've all heard all those things happen. But for me, I wasn't shocked or awed by anything that Mike Tomlin said or did, because I've seen it. I've been around it since he started to coach in 2007. I would not be surprised if eventually he does go into a Bill Cowher type role with CBS where he's behind a desk. I don't see him being like a color commentator during a game. I could see him being like, let's go to Terry Bradshaw, who is doing the halftime report for Fox Sports or something like that. But I don't think he's done coaching. Like, he still loves this stuff. Like, I don't think that he is in any way, shape, or form looking to get out anytime soon.
If a play-by-play announcer said the wrong thing, like, he would probably throw the guy out of the booth, just like, no, this is not what's happening at all. But when I'm talking about the life lessons, when he was saying, is this a job or is this a career in this past week? The week before, talking about the components of winning in all the preparation that's necessary, getting his team ready for Myles Garrett and knowing where 95 is this past week against the Browns. coaching Nick Herbig up and saying, hey, this is the expectation of yourself. This isn't a mistake. This isn't a fluke. After the pick six where George Pickens slips and falls and he pulls his receiver to the side saying, hey, we're not going to let this play define the game. It's things like that. You mentioned it on the player pods. I had the chance to talk with Mike Tomlin here on the Bleav in Steelers show with my co-host Ike Taylor at the time.
Yeah.
And just how open he was compared to a media availability, how you navigate that between being a coach where legacy traditional media has to tell a story, and in any story there has to be conflict, versus him being open and honest for what he needs to do to get his team ready. I just think you've gotten to see that behind the scenes access on Hard Knocks. And I don't know nationally if people knew that. I think in Pittsburgh we did, but nationally of people getting to see that, to say, well, okay, you've got the non-losing seasons, but not the recent playoff success. And my pushback has always been, well, look who his quarterbacks have been for going on 10 years now. And now that you have that and you're 10-3, and it looks like you're in place to win the AFC North division, that excites me when it comes to postseason and potentially getting a win and going on a run here come January. And I think you're seeing that unfold in real time. And then just the behind the scenes access that Hard Knocks can provide. I'm going on a rant here, but it's been awesome because it's something we've known in Pittsburgh for some time now.
Yeah. And to me, it's bolstering his resume for Coach of the Year. Because when you think about, okay, they're 10-3, there's teams with better records. How many coaches would have the cojones at 4-2 to pull the plug on your starting quarterback and put in another guy?
I was wrong. I would have said, keep starting Fields.
Yeah,
I was dead wrong about that.
And he can wear that like a badge of honor, and it could have blown up in his face, and it could have, but it didn't. And so he made that move. I think when you look back at the moves made in the offseason, even, I count that stuff. When you're talking about like Coach of the Year, you bring in a Patrick Queen and Deshaun Elliott, just those two players and the impacts they're having. You get Russell Wilson on the cheap. I think that he's slowly, and people that might say, well, that's Omar Khan. Please. Like this is Mike Tomlin's team. Omar Khan's not making a move that Mike Tomlin is not approving.
But there's synergy there, and that's what good organizations do. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think this show, Hard Knocks, and the way that he's being portrayed on a national light now, it's what Steeler fans have known forever. Like you said, we've seen this. Like, this isn't breaking news for us. And I think it's just drawing some attention to him and how quality of a coach he is, even though he doesn't have the postseason success in recent history that we want.
What do you remember about the Joey Porter, Willie Green fight back in the day?
I remember a lot about that day. It was James Harrison's coming out party.
Yeah.
I remember, and if you listen to and you watch it, it was I think it was Gumbel and Deerdorf that were doing that game.
Mm-hmm.
And Dan Deerdorf was like, oh, they're swinging and these are haymakers. And we're just sitting down to watch the game. And then you find out that Joey Porter just got ejected before the game even started. And that's when the Joey Porter rule came into effect, where the NFL players can't go. There's like a 10-yard buffer at midfield, and they can't go across that unless you're a place kicker or a punter. And so like that started after that. But I was like, this is crazy. I can't remember. I do remember that day. I do remember watching that. And I do remember thinking, what are we going to do now? And then James Harrison goes out and has himself a game. And you're like, I think we'll be fine.
Dan Deerdorf was the best because he had that. He had the famous Dwayne Rudd game with the Browns and Chiefs where he took off his helmet too soon and the Chiefs end up driving down the field to score. I think it was a game-winning field goal. And then he had the call as well. The Bears had this 300-pound lineman named Keith Traylor, and he had like a 67-yard interception return. This guy was probably 350. He might have been 400 pounds. Deerdorf was the guy on each of those calls, and just his level of enthusiasm. It was the best, man. Like, it was the absolute best.
He was good. He and Gumbel were great together.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, just classic, just relics of old-time NFL on CBS. I liked seeing that on Hard Knocks, given that I thought it was nice to see Joey Porter Sr. and Joey Porter Jr. together and how he's working his way through. And it's a perfect segue because He'll have his work cut out for him again. What is a strong Eagles receiving core? But this is an Eagles team coming off a week against Carolina. I saw this stat and I had to do a double take, Jeff. Only 108 passing yards for Jalen Hurts. And A.J. Brown after the game saying, what went wrong? And he gives a one-word answer and he says, passing. He's not wrong. And now they're trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube in advance of this game. The Eagles are going for the 10th straight game. So you're going to have turbulence throughout the course of a season. But this was an Eagles team that the last time they played the Steelers, A.J. Brown went off and Philly smoked us. What do you make of all of this? Because the storyline is definitely set.
My question is, are they going to let this beef? And when I say they, I'm talking Kellen Moore and his game plan for the Philadelphia Eagles. Are they going to let this beef and this smoldering news turn into a fire that's going to lead to less Saquon Barkley touches? And if that is the case, 2 thumbs up.
Yeah.
There's only one football to go around. And so if they're like, hey, early in the game, we have to force feed A.J. Brown. The Steelers are going to do what they've done all year. They are going to double team A.J. Brown. So this is what they've done against Jamar Chase. This is what they've done against all the other prolific receivers. Dante Jackson will have that receiver, and he will have help in every possible way on that side of the field. Joey Porter Jr. will have Devontae Smith opposite him. That's what the Steelers do. If they do something different, I will be stunned. But if they decide they're going to force feed A.J. Brown early in this game, when, by the way, the Eagles suck in the first quarter, they've scored 17 total points in the first quarter this entire year. I think if they cannot give it to Saquon Barkley, a team that averages 190 yards on the ground a game, that's perfect. Let's do it. I'm all for it. Let's feed A.J. Brown the ball. And could it come back to bite the Steelers if they can't stand up to that? Like you said, last time they played them, they went off. We'll see. If they want to do that, if they want to go that route, I'm okay with that, because I think Saquon Barkley is how Eagles have won 9 in a row, and he's how they're going to win 10 in a row unless they decide to alter their plan.
I know we can't get enough of the clip of Saquon jumping over the defender backwards. I know that's been on loop on SportsCenter and social media, but there's a reason why he's considered among the other MVP candidates in the league. There's a reason for that. So to say, hey, we have to get the ball to A.J. Brown, who is a true alpha number 1, but he's coming off a season low in targets with only 4. And so that beef of, we got to make sure things are right between star receiver and quarterback, hopefully that can play in Pittsburgh's favor. I'm with you there. Defensively, I think what the Steelers need to do is this, though, too, Jeff. It's the tush push. You have to avoid situations when you're in 3rd and short, 4th and short situations, because Philly has demonstrated the ability to move the ball, move the chains in crucial short distance situations. If you get into 3rd and short, 4th and short, they're going to pick up the first down with the tush push. You have to make it 3rd and medium, 3rd and long to avoid those situations. That's no knock on anyone that the Steelers have. It's just the style of ball that Philly plays.
Winning first downs are going to be big for the Steelers defense. And you think about it, okay, if you give up a 4-yard run, you're considered that a win. But now all of a sudden, get another 4-yard run, you're setting up 3rd and 2. And that's exactly what you just said. At 2 yards for Philadelphia, they're probably going to go for it on 4th down anyways if they even gain a yard on 3rd down. The Steelers need to eliminate negative plays on the defensive side of the ball. So penalties, things like jumping offside, stuff like that, that's going to help shorten and condense their yards to go. I think also ultimately, though, when you think about the Steelers defense, creating negative plays is going to be huge. And this is something that if you look back in the last 2 weeks, now granted you're playing Jameis Winston, but you did play Joe Burrow in that prolific Bengals offense. The Steelers have 7 sacks in the last 2 weeks. And not only do they have 7 sacks, but they're starting to ramp up their pass production. They have 17 quarterback hits in that time. You don't always, it's like the Lamar Jackson rule. You don't have to sack him, but you need to pressure him. You need to move him off his spot, make him uncomfortable, have him throw errant passes. The Steelers do that better than anyone else in the NFL when it comes to Lamar Jackson. I put Jalen Hurts in the same category in terms of how do you approach trying to stop him. Cone him in, pressure up the middle. Hello, Cam Hayward. He's having a defensive player of the year season, in my opinion. And then you force him to make a mistake. they don't throw a lot of balls away. They only have 11 turnovers this season, the Eagles, but the Steelers take the ball away. They force those interceptions. There's a big difference there. They got to win on first down, pressure Jalen Hurts when he does drop back to throw, and I think they have a chance.
Let's go quarterback hunting. I'm ready. I'm ready. And on Wisconsin to the quarterback between TJ Watt and Herbig.
For sure.
Highsmith getting back into the mix last week as well. He's coming back from his injury as well, where let's load up and let's start playing our best ball now on the back half of the season. But hey, race to the quarterback and let's see who gets there first, man.
Absolutely.
Like you say that and you think of, okay, what is Pittsburgh Steelers football? Their recipe has actually been pretty simple. And I know everyone's thrilled with the offense and letting Russ cook and all of that. But it's been, let's win the turnover battle. They've typically won time of possession. And you do those two things, you're going to win more games than you lose.
Absolutely.
It's as simple as that. It's not sexy. It's not flashy, but it is what it is. And that's how they've had success this year.
Yeah, the Steelers recipe hasn't changed. It's just that they have a more prolific offense scoring points. That's it. They're averaging 24.8 points, which, we're coming off years where they're averaging 18 and 17 points apiece a season. And you're like, 24, that's a touchdown difference. That's fantastic.
It's glorious, man. It's like, I don't hate watching them on offense anymore. My eyes aren't bleeding when I'm watching Pittsburgh Steelers offensive football. Offensively.
Right. I agree.
It's just been like, it's been like that for years. I mean, with Canada and Fiechner. I started this show in 2019. This is by far the best Steelers offense I've seen since I started covering the Steelers. You probably have to go back to 18 when you had the Killer Bees and Le'Veon Bell and AB were doing their thing. But it's like, oh my gosh. And it's like, I think at 10-3, even your most optimistic Steelers fan would be thrilled with where you're at. Again, this is going to be a really tough 3-game stretch. You can't lose all 3. If you go 2-1, I'd be really happy with that.
Hell yes.
Over these next 3 games.
And Mark, let me sprinkle some knowledge here for your listeners. So you talk about the Killer Bees, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back. In 2015, the Steelers averaged 26.4 points per game that year. 2016, 24.9. 2017, 25.4. 2018, 26.8. 2019 was a down year. 2020, 26 points. Now, granted, Antonio Brown was long gone in that year.
Mm-hmm.
This Steelers offense is averaging 24.8 points per game. They are entering Killer Bee level points per game in terms of average. Like, I hate to tell people that those are the numbers, and the Steelers still have 4 games to go. So if they put up 27 points, that average is going to tick up over 25 probably. And now all of a sudden, I don't think people view it the same because they were all flashed with the Killer Bees. Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, like they just tormented other teams. It just looks different. It looks different, but they're effective, and they can end drives against Philadelphia with Chris Boswell extra points and not field goals. They're going to be a really tough team to beat at any game that they play.
Yeah, let's get the tight ends going too, because Freiermuth's had a really nice 3-game stretch. And really the biggest thing I've seen with Russ, outside of getting Pickens the ball, and we can talk about the moon balls and the touch and the anticipation, getting Darnell Washington the ball, he's like, can you imagine having to tackle that guy, especially now when it's cold outside? And it's like, where has this been in the offense now? We've been wanting this now since he's been on the roster, and he's making some plays early on in his career. We only have a few minutes left, Jeff. I have to ask you about this. Bill Belichick going to UNC. Your thoughts, and I'll share mine.
I don't know. Honestly, I think college football is a freaking train wreck. It is like a ship at sea without a rudder. They have no guiding force with the NIL, with the transfer portal. Yeah. People are just doing whatever the hell they want. It's like the Wild West. Hey, you want to do it? Sure, go ahead and do it. And people were like, could you imagine Bill Belichick in someone's living room? That doesn't happen anymore. Like, it's 2024. It's like, hey, you want to come to play for Bill Belichick, which UNC has a GM. I saw, like, who has a GM in college sports?
That's what a lot of the schools are doing now. And what does that mean relative to the football, then relative to the school? It's crazy, man.
I don't get it. Bill Belichick just wants to coach. If he thinks this is going to springboard him into the NFL again, I don't think that's necessarily the play.
Mm-mm.
Nothing makes sense here. Do I think he could be successful? Yeah, because he's a good coach. And will there be players that want to play for him for a year and then they're going to leave because they're going to be miserable probably? In the NFL, I've got you under contract for 4 years. Unless I cut you or trade you, you show up or you don't get paid. In college, these kids are going to go there and be like, this sucks. My life is miserable. I'm not having any fun. I'm going to transfer and go to somewhere where I do feel like I have a better. And that's what's also crazy. You look at like UNLV this year, where they have two of their most prolific offensive players in the early portions of the season just saying, oh, you guaranteed me this and I didn't get it. I'm out. Like, what are we doing in college sports? I don't know. I digress. I know you only got
Let me push
minutes.
back a little bit because I know UNC's bumping up their NIL money. I read between 4 and 5 million to like 20. Belichick comes in. He's 72. The guy who's replacing Mac Brown, who's the most successful coach in program history, 73. So real youth movement in Chapel Hill. But here's his pitch, 6 Super Bowl rings. You want me to lay him out for you if you do need me to come into your living room? And if you talk about wanting to go to the next level, that to me makes sense for a program that hasn't won an ACC championship in football since 1980. Wow. So that's what they're trying to do to get over the top and to try to get them back to where they almost got to with Mac Brown, but couldn't quite get there. And it's keeping up with the Joneses. It's not just the ACC. I look at this from the standpoint of the revenue generated from football compared to basketball. North Carolina has always been a basketball state, but the revenue generated from football, you don't want to just compete with the people, the other schools in your conference. You want to be the best of the best with the SEC and the Big Ten, which are kings right now. How much longer we even have conferences for? I'll be honest with you. I really don't know the answer to that because I think it's all TV, all the TV money that's there to actually watch the games. But it's almost like UNC's version of Colorado bringing in Dion. It's the same type of effect where when this got floated out there last week, Jeff, we were like, well, good for UNC for turning over rocks, but this will never happen. And now it's happening. And I don't think he's going to leave for the NFL. There's got to be some sort of contingency in the contract where he would have to pay an exorbitant amount if he were to leave and just to leave town after he's getting introduced later today at the time of this recording, Jeff. So I feel like I'm in a fever dream where it's like, this is real life, where this is actually happening and how we came to this from, we got to get someone younger. Mac Brown's too old to get someone who's like 8 months, maybe 9 months younger than him is just, it's crazy, man. It's crazy.
I don't know. We could be watching a train wreck in real time. I don't know. It could work out though. We never know.
The only other thing I'll say would be is like Bill Cowher left the CBS set and said, I want to go back to my alma mater at NC State if that were to open up further, like down the line.
Maybe.
I looked this up. He's 67. I mean, again, Bill Belichick's 72 years old. I will say this. He's personable enough when he goes on McAfee and the other 4 or 5 shows that he does to where the media members that cover him and how he interacts in a Q&A, it's like we were talking about earlier before when Mike Tomlin goes on one of a podcast of his former players versus how he comports himself in front of media members. I think those are 2 different guys, right? Because when you're in front of reporters and media members, you don't want to give up information that can help your opponent versus when I need to be personable and charm you and recruit you, there's going to be a personality and appease to you. Because if we're going to work together and I'm going to develop you as a football player, there's got to be a relationship there. And so that's where I factor in what players say. Go listen to any player who's ever been under the Patriots and Belichick that's had success. Yeah, it's going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of work that goes into it, but you're going to be prepared. And you're going to be prepared, and they're going to have a better defense too. That's another thing that's played North Carolina is that defense has been Swiss cheese, man. And that's going to be, you're not going to lose games because defensively or due to coaching incompetence. I promise you that. So I can't wait to see how this plays out because it was like, I still can't believe it. Like, I still feel like I'm in a dream right now.
Yeah, it's weird. It's odd. I don't know. It's just
crazy,
weird.
Man. He is Jeff Hartman. He is with the Steel Curtain Network. Jeff, if there's anything you need to plug with your great show, appreciate your time here this morning on the Bleav in Steelers show.
I appreciate it. You've been on my Let's Ride podcast, which is every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning on the Steel Curtain Network. But we do a lot of shows, so check us out wherever you get your podcast by searching Steel Curtain Network. Or if you want to check out our website, steelcurtainnetwork.com, you can find me on Twitter at jhartman, HARTMAN_PIT. Get all my grilling thoughts and fun stuff like that.
Yes. You're still going strong with Oklahoma Joe's.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. You should have seen the turkeys I had for Thanksgiving. I smoked one and grilled another one. They were fantastic.
Multiple turkeys in the Hartman household. That's fantastic. He is Jeff Hartman. I'm Mark Bergin. I'll be back live on this feed on Sunday following the Steelers and the Eagles. If you enjoyed listening to this, go leave us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. On YouTube, hit that subscribe button on the Mark Bergin YouTube channel. He's Jeff Hartman. I'm Mark Bergin. Again, I'll see you later on Sunday. Until then, take care. So long, everybody.